How can a seemingly insignificant detail in Daniel 3 help us get a glimpse of the intentional design of the book of Daniel and lead us to some fascinating insights about God and His character? Let's check it out. Hi, welcome to another episode of Masterpiece. My name is Chris, and one of the reasons I'm so fascinated by the Bible is because it's written with such great intentionality. I mean, seriously, the more you study this book, the more you realize that every word, every detail is important and just at the right place. It's just really amazing. And of course, that also goes for the book of Daniel. Now, if you've been following this channel, you know that so far we've looked at some things in Daniel chapter 1 and 2. This time we're going to go to chapter 3. Okay, so Daniel chapter 3. Now, as you probably know, in Daniel chapter 3, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar sets up an image of pure gold, which obviously reminds us of the image in chapter 2, where just the head is of gold, suggesting that Nebuchadnezzar wants to reinterpret the dream in the sense that his kingdom will last forever. So he sets up this image in chapter 3, and then he gathers all the important people in his kingdom, all the officials, and he commands them to fall down and worship. Now notice that according to verse 4, this command is given by a herald who loudly proclaimed, or cried aloud. Literally it says who cried with strength. So this is again one of those details we could just skip over. So a herald cried aloud, great, let's move on. But if everything in the Bible is important, it might make sense to stop and think about it, and to ask the question, why is it written the way it's written? Why didn't the author say something like, and then the command was given, or then they were told? Why this specific mention of a herald who cries aloud? One of the things that's helpful at this point is to check, either in a concordance or with a Bible software program, whether these particular terms occur anywhere else in the book. When we do that, we discover that the Aramaic term translated as herald occurs only here in Daniel 3 verse 4. But the expression to cry with strength occurs 2 more times in the book, once in Daniel 4 and once in Daniel 5, which means the expression occurs 3 chapters in a row. Coincidence? Probably not. So what do we do with this observation? Well, we could check if there are any other words, phrases, or themes in chapter 3 that also occur in chapters 4 and 5. And guess what? There are, in particular in chapter 4. We might notice, for example, that in both chapters 3 and 4, there are high objects representing Nebuchadnezzar, and in both cases the height of these objects is specified, and the height is much greater than the width. In chapter 3, it's the image, whose height is 60 cubits. In chapter 4, it's the tree, whose height is great. So we have 2 chapters right next to each other, and in both chapters there are high objects representing Nebuchadnezzar, and in both chapters someone cries aloud concerning these high objects. And in both chapters judgment plays a role, and people are given a second chance in order to avoid the execution of that judgment. The more you study these 2 chapters, the more parallels like that pop up, and the more you realize that the author placed these 2 chapters next to each other quite intentionally. The obvious question is, why? What's the significance of these parallels? As always, there are a number of reasons, one of which is that the juxtaposition of these 2 chapters highlights the character of God by contrasting him with Nebuchadnezzar. Think about it. By making an image completely of gold in chapter 3, which by the way reminds us of a tower in Genesis 11 that's also set up in defiance of God on a plain in Babylon. So by making this image in chapter 3, Nebuchadnezzar in effect rejects God's message to him in chapter 2. I mean, he basically says, there's only one kingdom, mine, and this kingdom will last forever. I am the Most High, and therefore everybody has to worship me, and whoever does not will be killed immediately. What we should also note is that the announcement here in chapter 3 is made in a real-life public setting where peer pressure plays a big role, and that Nebuchadnezzar attempts to execute the judgment as soon as the Hebrews reject the second chance he gives them. But ironically, he, the Most High, fails. Now look at God in chapter 4. He doesn't reject Nebuchadnezzar, but he reaches out to him privately, in a dream, with no one else around. And he basically says to him, I'm the Most High, and I give the kingdom to whoever I wish. I'm going to humble you for a specified time so that you will recognize that I'm the ruler of everything. And then I'm going to restore the kingdom to you. Note, not a word about death, i.e. no final judgment. And when we keep reading, no immediate judgment either, even though Nebuchadnezzar rejects the second chance God gives him. And even though, in contrast to Nebuchadnezzar, God truly is the Most High and therefore truly does deserve to be worshipped. I mean, like Nebuchadnezzar, God could have said, "You're not willing to acknowledge me as the Most High? I'm going to destroy you immediately." But no, the judgment is delayed for a year, and it's not designed to kill Nebuchadnezzar, but to change his heart. Which means God doesn't treat Nebuchadnezzar like Nebuchadnezzar treats him and everyone else. Instead of caring only about himself and his own glory like Nebuchadnezzar does, God truly cares about Nebuchadnezzar and about Nebuchadnezzar's subjects. That's, by the way, one of the reasons why God introduces a new high object in chapter 4. Instead of a lifeless image of gold that everyone bows down to, God chooses the image of a tree to represent Nebuchadnezzar. A tree that bears fruit and that serves everyone else. Because that's what true greatness and true leadership is all about. And because that's what it truly means to worship God. Not just for Nebuchadnezzar, but also for you and for me. So what about the connection to chapter 5? Well, that's something I still need to take a look at myself. But maybe you have an idea. If so, let me know in the comments. Would love to hear from you. I really hope you're doing well, that these videos are helpful for you, that they motivate you to study the Bible for yourself. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, now would be a good time to do so. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends. Really appreciate all the support, all the positive feedback I'm getting. Thanks so much. Stay healthy, and we'll see you next time.